Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township, January 8, 2019. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, my son Vinny will open us up in prayer. Come on up.
Dear Lord, I pray that we all had a good day today and that we all have a good day tomorrow and that we all have a safe trip home tonight and that we all have a good rest of our lives. Amen.
Amen. Okay, item 2, approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner is absent. Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Item 3 is the consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to approve and place on file the minutes of the December 18, 2018 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board. B, accept with resignation Jan Sass, Annabelle Myers, Denise Riddle, Jeanne Lutz, Diane Burneth, Kathy Baville, Joyce Blanton, Judith Zek, Christina Houston, Nancy Pekrowski, Carol Reinhart, Vivian Garber, and Patricia Bull from the Beautification Committee, effective immediately. And C, reappointment of Amanda Mills, Justin Arnold, and Greg Moore to the Lewis Avenue Redevelopment Committee for a second term ending 12/31/2020.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Support.
Motion and supported. Discussion, I just want to say, I just want to thank everyone on the Beautification Committee that has served many years. It's a lot of work, and it's a thankless job, too. I know everybody on this board appreciates all the hard work. I think some 30 years, some of them have spent beautifying our township. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. And we are going to continue on with it. We're going to keep seeking out people. So if you're interested in serving on the Beautification Committee, we're looking to appoint some people. So other than that, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Number 4 is presentations. A, State Representative Jason Shepard, update on the Michigan's legislator, and I really invited him here. Mainly, I had some concerns with the Buckeye franchise fee, and so if you'd like to touch on that as well throughout your update.
I wore Michigan because you keep bringing up Buckeye. I did that on purpose.
Good for you. Good
Go
for
blue.
you.
Go blue.
That could be a whole nother discussion about Buckeye Cable in Bedford, but we won't get into that tonight. So you're bringing up the franchise fees. So I need to state my name too. I'm Jason Shepard, State Representative, 56th District, 7235 Bent Creek. Yes, so there was some conversation about the franchise fees. This is in regards to Senate Bill 637 and Senate Bill 894. So these bills were actually brought to our attention for small cells. Small cells are what the telecommunications providers are using instead of building the big towers as they used to. So we had to come up with some right-of-way access, some standardized permitting for municipalities on allowing these small cells to go up. It's to do the next phase of the 5G and then all the way up to the next steps for Wi-Fi service and all that. Somewhere in Wayne County, Detroit area, somebody started this trend that the franchise fees were going to be eliminated out of use for local municipalities. I don't really know where that myth came from. It is nowhere in the legislation, so that is a huge myth. You will still be able to collect the franchise fees going forward. That this bill does not take that away. In fact, there's a federal guidelines for how you collect and how you charge. So the state has in no way, shape, or form changed that. There was some changes done when it came to like your local cable access channel and certain funding for that, but it has nothing to do with the local municipalities and the franchise fees. So why that got brought up, I have no idea. We dug through the legislation. I have my floor analysis here. It actually got to a point where they handed out a myth and fact sheet to all the legislators that were getting the phone calls. So the video franchise fees and PEG funding is not in jeopardy. There are no provisions that changes that in the statute. So we can put a period on that, and hopefully that solves your question that you have. So I understand the township purposes, it's a pretty large part of, or a decent size in your budget, and that you'd have to work out the negotiations and how that works. So you will not have to worry about that going into your negotiations or into your budget for the year. So is there any questions on that from anybody?
Ms. Tenenberry, oh,
Good.
I have one question for you, Jason. Do you know what the status of the federal regulatory review on this issue is? Because I think it's been proposed, not at the state level, as you accurately pointed out, but at the federal level, that the franchise fees be eliminated. Do you have any feedback from the federal level on that for us?
What I could say is that when we were debating these bills, that was brought up, there really is no feedback from that. There's a couple of different rulings we're working on, because another big piece of legislation that's kind of been passed through the state is drones. And the FAA is working on language in regards to drones, where they can fly and what they can do. We passed some state statutes in regards to that, but if the FAA makes a different type of ruling, then we're going to have to adjust what we've done. So it's very similar to something here. I've not heard anything more about it since we were dealing with this in the infamous lame duck session that we had last month.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Tenenberry?
Well, this new kind of whatever that doesn't take towers, is that a structure, or, I mean, I'm pretty,
So it's kind of interesting. Small cells, they vary in size, but most of them are about this big. And they attach to posts, they can attach them to buildings, they can attach them to a lot of different things. If you walk around Lansing, you wouldn't even know they were there unless you looked up on a light pole. They paint them black, there's a few antennas on the top, those are small cells. So basically what it does is it provides coverage in broader areas because they can put them in more places.
okay, so now all these towers that we have around here, I mean, if they stop using those, do they have to take them down? I mean,
So it really depends on whatever the contract is with the person that provided the space for the tower and how that works. There's a long-term leases on a lot of these. So depending on each language that was negotiated, that's how it worked. Not everything will go away. It's not like every tower will be unusable. This is just a trend of trying to downsize what they're putting up places. And some areas you're going to need towers for stuff. It's just going to be how we expand into rural areas to provide better cell service. This is all stemming down to rural broadband initiatives to make sure that people are connected to the internet in areas that currently are not. These are all steps that are being made. And this legislation took about 2 years to deal with because you had to have telecommunications involved, you had to have the cable providers involved and how they handle. I mean, there was a lot of moving parts to this. So over time, you'll probably, you're not going to see a lot of new leases for building these new towers because it won't be necessary. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the current existing structures are not going to be used to place these small cells on them
okay.
to provide 5G service and as it moves on to 6 or 7, whatever the future may hold.
I just didn't want to see a lot of eyesores standing, without any use.
Yeah, and I believe, if you read some of the leases and being in real estate, having to deal with those sometimes, you'll see that there's provisions after a certain amount of time. Some of those towers would be removed anyway. So it just depends on what the telecommunication provider wants to do. But, that's what we are. Everybody's on a cell phone now. So they got to find ways to get it out to everybody.
Right.
And that's what these do. So,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
You said it affects the local channel, our local government channel?
No, it would be more like Impact out of Monroe.
Okay, so
Yeah.
our channel, we'd be able to keep.
Has nothing to
through.
do with that, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's one topic. Is there anything else you want me to talk about?
What's going on with the state? Where's more road funding?
You got it's not my problem. Call the road commission. So here's what I'll say. They got money. What I'll say is tomorrow's our swearing in. This is where we start. This is where we start our 100th legislature. FZ was reelected in November. I was elected by my colleagues to be in House leadership this term, so I'm the House Majority Whip. I'll also be chairing a committee, which will be named on Thursday. So from that standpoint, it's going to get a lot busier over the next 2 years. Obviously, we have Republican-controlled legislature with a Democrat governor, which is going to be some challenges there in figuring out how to maneuver certain things that we need to get done. You know, it could go one of two ways. I have no prediction on that. I think that it's not always a bad thing to have some parity in government. So we'll see if that holds true. There's some priorities that all of us still have that I think that in the next 2 years you're going to see. Road funding is one of them. Obviously, if you listen to any television ads during the election, there were some choice words talked about with road funding. The issue becomes this, though, and this is something that is going to be a long-term problem if we don't fix it. Number one is where we get our funding from. You know, the state of Michigan is unique in a way where we rely on registration fees, we rely on a gas tax for funding. There's no general fund dollars that are addressed for road funding until this last bill package we did my first term that took $600 million of general fund. The issue with that going forward is that's general fund dollars. Those aren't designated dollars constitutionally for roads. So those can be changed at any moment. If the economy takes a dip and there's a $600 million deficit in other departments, it's going to come from somewhere. So that's not a long-term solution. Long-term solution is to figure out funding mechanisms that work. If you look at what other states do, like in Ohio, for instance, 1% of their sales tax is totally dedicated to roads and infrastructure. They don't have the similar type fuel tax structure as we do. So if you're going to really focus on fixing the problem, you're going to have to figure out a funding mechanism that works. The other problem is Act 51 is an issue, and it's a big issue because you're dealing with miles of road, not use of road. So townships like Bedford, Monroe County, we're in a bottom tier of funding, even though we have a lot more use. That's always going to be an uphill battle because you're going to have the northern groups and others not want to change that because of the money that they receive out of the road funding. So what we've done is some innovative ways of taking dollars from the top of the bucket and moving them down to the middle of the bucket. So when we did the $600 million in new revenue and $600 million out of general fund, one of the $600 million pots was done through the middle down. So it received more money to the local road commissions. And we'll realize our final $1.2 billion plan in 2020. At that time, that's when the max of that last road bill. But I do think that we've done, every time there's excess money, say at the end of the year, you have these supplementals because there's excess money in our budget. That's where the majority of the money goes, is the road projects. And we have to realize that the state of Michigan, if you were to look at a national trend, is about $2 billion a year short compared to where we should be on road funding.
See, now, Paul and I were at a meeting, when was that, Paul, the federal meeting for the road?
2 weeks ago.
And they said we're $100 billion underfunded at the state of Michigan for roads and infrastructure.
That would be a lot of gold pavement. I think a yearly thing would be $2 to $3 billion. That could be influxed into roads to make us competitive with our surrounding states. Now, they could be talking about long-term things that weren't fixed that now all of a sudden become an emergency. But you're never going to find $100 billion to do that. So you're going to have to come up with a plan based upon increased road funding. See, because when you have a mechanism where it's fuel driven, think about the fuel economy of vehicles. I mean, you're not filling up your car the same because you're getting more miles per gallon. So you kind of have this inverse problem. And less people are driving, let's just be honest. You know, the idea of turning 16 and getting a car and, buying vehicles is starting to wane a bit. You can see that in dip in a lot of different things. People are using different types of transportation. So if you add all that together, you see a declining revenue source. That's why we have to look at the whole thing as a state to figure out how do we solve this problem long-term and not just patch it, like we did with the last road funding. But it was the only thing we could do, because we had to get money out there, and we had to find a way to do it. And that's why you saw an increase in gas tax and registration fees, because that's the only place that we're allowed to designate funds for roads as a state. That's it. There's only 2 places. Everything else is general fund dollars, which comes from everywhere else. So it's a very tricky situation. And you see a lot more municipalities that are going to funding more of their projects with general fund dollars or creating millages. And that's a trend in Michigan.
It would take a constitutional amendment to divert part of the sales tax like Ohio does?
Correct. That's what was attempted on the Proposal 1, the vote that went down 80-20. That's what that was going to do.
You're probably going to punch me, but auto insurance, what are the chances of getting something
So-
done with that the next 2 years?
The good news for that is that we have a new governor who wants to do it. The House Speaker wants to do it. Senate Majority Leader wants to do it. A lot of the no votes in the House are no longer there. They were either term limited or they ran for an office unsuccessfully. The Oakland County blockade has kind of been broken up. So there's definitely more positive to move that forward. The other thing is we have a very willing partner in Dan Gilbert who wants to see this done. And I say that because if it has to go to a ballot initiative, he has the funds to do it, to actually collect the signatures and put something like this on the ballot. So I would either see legislative action, or I would see legislative action to allow it to go on the ballot coming up and allow the citizens to make that decision. How it's going to look in the next 2 years, I couldn't, if I had a prediction of that, I don't know. But I feel that this is the time that something's going to be done. Too many people are talking about it. Too many new legislators ran on it for it not to have some sort of change. What it looks like, I don't know.
Okay.
But something will probably be done.
Anybody else have any questions? Or?
Going to the roads, do you know how House Bill 5490, how that'll
What is
affect
House Bill
townships?
5490?
That is it's Michigan Transportation Fund. Allows townships to assume jurisdiction of roads under jurisdiction of county road commissions and receive a share in the distribution of Michigan Transportation Fund revenue that would otherwise go to the county road commission.
Was that, which bill's package was that under?
It's 5490 is.
Who was the sponsor of it?
I do not know.
Okay. I'd have to look that bill up to know what
Okay.
it does.
That's why I was just curious.
Yeah. We'd vote on thousands of things, so I'd have to look up and see what that was or what the specifics were on that.
That's why I was just curious how it would make it.
There was a bill package that I was part of that would allow townships or locals to be able to tap into a grant program to do specific projects. We were going to take some money out of the trunk line fund and put it aside so that you can do start to finish projects. The qualifications for that would be some sort of innovation. So if you take like re-emulsified asphalt to use as your paving, that would count towards, like an innovative way of redoing roads. Because there's a lot of antiquation about $1 million a mile to do a road. I think there's a lot of different techniques we can use, so it's not $1 million a mile to do a road. So we're trying to push innovation. MDOT's not always the quickest at wanting to change things, and that's why we were going to try to force some of that, so that the locals have a little more freedom on that. But I'll look up 5490 and see exactly what it does.
right. Can you stick around for the first public comment and in case anybody has any questions for you?
Absolutely, I can.
Okay.
For you, Paul, I can do that.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Item 4B is Captain Steinman, a key box presentation. Come on up.
Good evening. To start out this evening, when I took the position of the fire inspector, a few things that I decided to do for myself was to go ahead and, number one goal would be consistency and fairness, and ultimately life safety in our public buildings. That prevention inspections are extremely important for our department and our community. I'd like to give you a short overview of what we've done so far through the inspections and investigations in our department. Gone ahead and reorganized some of the inspections. Business owners within Bedford and building owners may see a different change in the schedule. We've moved things more around to make them more efficient, moved them around to make them more friendly for the business owner. We've also started to, since July 1st, we call all business owners to schedule the inspection instead of just coming in. This has been, the feedback from the business owners has been very, very positive because the business owners would like to know how to make their buildings safe. So we take that extra time now and go through there and continue to go through there. And there are some business owners that aren't always able to be present for inspections. So we work really, really hard to go ahead and make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to fire safety and life safety. The inspections are completed by reporting software. We no longer are having any paper. It's all paperless. We do it from an iPad now. The iPad gives us the ability to go ahead and go through the inspections, take pictures of issues that are, or things that are not compliant. Before I leave the building, I'm able to send that report right to them at their desktop. But the pictures are really good. It shows exactly what we're looking at, what needs to be corrected to be compliant. Also, we're taking more time and looking more of our schedule through the week at site plans. Our site plans, we sit down, look at subdivisions that are being developed. We look at buildings that are being built. Our goal is to make sure that we aid the building owner that's building it and the construction crew to make sure that they're building it to the building specifications and also for the inspections to make sure they're building their building safely. This saves a lot of money if we do it before we can give them guidance of what needs to be done. Onto the key boxes. I sent out information to all of you about a week ago pertaining information to key boxes. Our goal was to be consistent and fair. It was something that was started in 2003. Made it the goal in July of being consistent across the board, where every business, or excuse me, every building in Bedford will have a key box. I know I sent information out to you, and I said I think it was roughly 190 or 122 key boxes. We're now at 132 as of 5 o'clock today, and over 200 keys. 200 business owners has produced their keys for the front door of their businesses. What happens there is that that box is placed on the front of the building, and it's used for multiple reasons, but one is a quick access to the building. Through the inspection starting in July, I've realized that a lot of our building owners and business owners do not live in our community. I've asked a lot of them, they live 15, 20, 25 minutes away. And if there's a real fire or some type of emergency in the building, we could be waiting that long. And a lot of business owners do not want their front doors broken into. So the key gives us a quick access in there. I've got a box here I'm going to pass around real quick. You'll find as this box is passed around, this is a sample box, and there's a key in it now for a sample box. But this box is a vault. This is a 3200 box that most of our business owners so far are using. It's I indicate to them that any
You don't wear that on your wrist.
local contractor can install it, but inside there will be a key for their front door and or their gate to their facility. If it's a building owner, they're contacted, and the business owner's contacted as well. That's after we address the situation within the building. Gives us the ability to gain access quickly, find out what the life threat is, if there is. We also use it for medical emergencies as well, for nursing homes and so forth.
Quick question on that,
Yep.
Doug. I've noticed driving around, some of these boxes are installed on wood buildings. How would you know if somebody hit it off there with a sludge and got into it?
Well, it's,
Now they have a key. That's some of the, because I get a lot of calls, you know.
Right.
Some of the concern is, well, how do, you know, they have access to my building now.
right. That box, as you pass around, it's like a vault there. It's all about how it's installed on the door. It's probably just to the point where if they get in that box, they've worked hard to get in there, and the keys are pretty secure in there. I did call Knox Box Company today to talk to them, and they don't have many issues. Matter of fact, not many at all that people getting access to that box. It's like a vault. It's one of the best boxes out there.
What's it made of?
But that I don't know. My job is to do the codes and put the box in the building, but I don't know what it's made of. But if you go to knoxbox.com, the specifications are on there of what it's made of.
Type of steel.
Yes, sir.
I know some steel you can't cut.
Right.
You know.
So that's a pretty heavy box, very durable box. There's over 14,000 communities across America and that have that type of box in their buildings. We follow the International Fire Code, and that's one of the code requirements. And it's now a code requirement to pass a fire inspection since July 1st. Any questions on the box for anybody? Good. Next are the fire alarms. The inspection department investigation. Fire alarms that come in within the community and our public buildings. I make every effort I can when available to go out to these businesses and find out what their alarms are going off. If there's not an emergency there, we work with the building owner to troubleshoot and figure out what malfunction caused that alarm to go off. Last would be we no longer do inspections in October. October is going to strictly be fire prevention. I think last October we hit about probably 8,000 kids in our community, elementary schools, junior high, churches, preschools. So that's another change in our division. So if we have any other questions. Yeah, Craig.
I was curious why why are we having the lockbox presentation? Is there people, are there business owners that are fighting it and not being compliant, or?
Good question.
I'm curious of
There
why
are some people, there are some businesses in Bedford that have multiple questions, and we brought it to the front to make sure we can educate. But we are probably pretty close to about 99% compliant with this box as I started. I've got probably one or two businesses that are non-compliant, but we're moving in a good direction.
No, why is that? Why are they non-compliant? Are they, do they state reasons of why they don't want it?
Well, their fear is putting a key in the front of the building. But the box is proven to be pretty solid in a vault, and to the point where it's pretty strong in the building.
So different types of buildings, okay? You have different types of Knox boxes, correct?
Steel ones, they're all metal.
No, I'm saying, but you have different grades, like, somebody that has a home out of their business or a business out of their home.
Right.
They're gonna have a different type of Knox box.
They are. I've been giving them applications on residential Knox box. They're a little smaller, but they're still made the same material, and they anchor on the front of their house as well. So these are for bigger businesses that have multiple sets of keys, like our plazas.
Because that's part of the kickback some people have. Well, I don't care if there's an issue in my house. I don't want to spend $300 and just kick my front door in.
Well, I don't want to give a key to
I
the
don't want to give a
government
key-
to
you know what I
my
mean,
building.
so.
For real. I mean, that's why I'm curious. It seems like a great option, and it seems like a terrible requirement, in my opinion. So that's why I'm wondering, it's a great option, but is this something that we need to, twist people's arms behind their back to have if they
No.
don't want it?
No, it's been a very successful campaign. There's been a few that weren't happy with the decision that be compliant and to be fair and consistent, but we've been very successful.
One more quick thought on that, Nancy. So people say, well, how can we get around it? The only way to get around it is to disband the National Fire Code on our end. So, I mean, I've gotten a couple questions on that. So explain briefly what happens in that case.
The Bedford Township Board in 2003, or 2004, excuse me, voted to use the International Fire Code as the guide for inspections, International Building Code for building codes for Mr. Kohler is doing. We've adopted it every new addition all the way to 15, we currently use that. So that is the one we currently use. It's a code requirement, and I just continue to make sure we're compliant with the codes.
Ms. Tinberry?
Well, first of all, I want to commend, applaud, support Captain Steinman for doing his job. I'm thoroughly applauding him and very happy that we have someone in this position that will know what his job is, follow through, do his job. Doing our job doesn't always please everyone, we all know that. However, at the same time, that's nothing to do with Captain Steinman. I also understand those business owners who are concerned about putting a key outside where, I don't know, I mean, I can't even imagine how they might get in, but we know that where there's a will, there's a way. Vandals can do many things, and so, and I understand what Captain Steinman has said, and I believe that that's the case 99% of the time, but I understand the business owners who don't want to do that. I am not a big government person. I'm not a big government, oversee. People need to be responsible for themselves, and so this is one of those areas where I think that sometimes government goes overboard and mandates and requires things that, really aren't really necessary for everybody. I guess my question is, isn't there some kind of a grandfather clause at all that, these businesses that were built before we ever, what we're doing is requiring them to spend money, and maybe in some people's eyes it's not a lot of money, $300 to $500, but we're requiring them to spend money to do something that when they built their building or bought their building, it wasn't required. Is there no grandfathered clause that says people before a certain time? Don't shake your head that way. I want to see it this way. I'm just thinking we grandfather other things, and so I was hoping that maybe there'd be a grandfather clause. But
Well, yeah, with respect to grandfather clauses, in the context that we're used to dealing with, it's in zoning, prior legal nonconforming uses, and of course we're all very aware of that. But this is a code provision, and as opposed to a zoning provision, and so no, a grandfather clause would not apply. Once we adopt the code, which we have, and we've consistently done that with each revision to the code, those are the requirements that apply, and Captain Steinman is simply enforcing those requirements. As he said, most of the business owners have complied, and they see the benefit. I guess it would be interesting that surely somebody has had a study based on some government grant as to how strong these things are and how often they've been breached, and have communities have they had problems. So that might be out there as data for us to review. But at this time, that's the law. He's enforcing the law. And we are, with those remaining people who are questioning, we're working through that. And hopefully we'll work through it to the point where we can have 100% compliance. There have been some issues raised recently with professional buildings, such as medical buildings, lawyers, accountants who have a lot of confidential documents, HIPAA-protected documents, lawyer-client privilege documents, controlled substances in a pharmacy or a doctor's offices. Those issues have come up, but we're working through those, and hopefully that will be resolved. But right now, at the forefront is public safety and safety of the people who may be in that building. And if a call comes in, and if it's after hours and someone's working late, that gives the department access to that building. It could save a life, or it could prevent a fire. So, so I went way beyond your question, Nancy. I'm sorry about that. But those are the issues that the department's been dealing with, and I think effectively dealing with.
Mr. Clements?
Just a couple of points. I was going to echo some of what Phil said as it relates to HIPAA and privacy and all of those. And to some degree, I concur with Craig. I think that we want to be careful about government overreach. But at the same time, we as a board enact ordinance on virtually every resident and business owner in this community. At some level, that's what government does. We set up rules, and there's a reason for the rules. A couple of things that I would be very curious about if we were going to explore undoing this or modifying it or grandfathering.
Well, just to say, in no way, shape, or form was I suggesting undoing the National
No,
Fire
but
Code.
but
I'm
there's
just
some
saying that's
questions that
all.
have come up. One of the first questions to me is I know that we as a community, because of the quality of our fire department, we all benefit on our homeowners insurance rating. I would be curious to find out if we start playing with this code, what implications that would have on those areas. Secondarily, I would like to specifically look at safety of our firefighters. Much respect to a business owner who doesn't want to have a key hung. My first responsibility is to do everything I can as a board member to protect our employees. And if having a key there, if there are statistics and there's a justifiable reason that it is safer for a firefighter to enter a building and it's less risk, that's a tough bar to get over, and it's something we want to be very careful about. The only last thing, and it's purely opinion and conjecture, is I would caution a business owner, if you find that box knocked off your building, you're being targeted. And trust me, somebody's not going to break into that in 2 to 3 hours. As a business owner, if I had a business and that was broken off, I would be glad that that got broken off, because it would be telling me I have somebody who is upset with me and I need to go rekey immediately. So while I see it as a burden and troublesome, I think you can also look at it as a potential flag of warning that isn't just a potential perceived overreach of the board ordinance. So just a couple things to consider if we walk this forward.
Yeah, being a steel worker for 17 years, you're not getting in that box in a quick time.
No, thank you.
You have to have a
Mr. Francis?
Seems like a box like that and many other safety items will keep the non-professional thieves from breaking in. The professionals are going to come through the wall some way. You can't stop everybody. I'm wondering if the code allows an opt-out where the business owner would take the personal responsibility for that. We gave him the opportunity and he refused.
Yeah, as written, it does not, Paul. Does not allow.
I didn't think it did either.
Yeah, it does not allow them to opt out to assume responsibility, because the issue really is public safety, the safety of our fire personnel who responds to the scene, life safety, not whether or not a business owner thinks this is a desirable thing to have, and which would prevent their front door or being knocked in to respond to an emergency. It's really something greater than that, and that the greater good, if you will, is health, safety, and the safety of our firefighters, and the ability to get in and respond to an emergency. It could be a commercial enterprise, for instance, that has some toxic chemical inside, and the quicker the response time, the quicker they're able to diffuse that situation before it becomes a huge public safety issue. So again, long answer to your question, but they don't have the ability to opt out as the code is currently drafted. Fairly stated, Captain?
Absolutely. There's no gray area in the code right now. It's black and white across the board, so you worded perfectly.
Any more questions on the Knox
I
box?
didn't feel like I got an answer for your question of what happens. Like if you disband National Fire Code or whatever, what happens?
I think that.
We don't want to do that.
No, I'm saying, what he's saying, that book is,
Yeah, there's more than one book. There's a lot in there. Are you asking what happens if you took away the International Fire Code?
I guess. Yeah.
We've been operating with that since 2003, and the business owners in town are used to that code for the last 13, 14 years. Yeah.
I guess you're still not answering this question. What would happen? You don't have to give us by detail, but what would happen? You
Well, I
have
think
to.
insurance rates would go up.
Yeah, what would you? I don't know if you can answer the question or not.
No, I'd have to do some research on it for sure.
Well, let me try and answer.
Chief, you want to
Adam,
come up and answer the
Chief,
question?
if you know.
It's really it really is a legal question, too. If you eliminate the code, you have no rules to go by, and there's no enforcement mechanism that would allow our fire department to regulate what they need to regulate to properly do their job. So from that standpoint, Craig, it's a legal question. You eliminate the code, you eliminate the rules.
In bringing that up, I've only told that to people that call that say we're taking you to court. That's our only option to undo that, which that's not something I'm suggesting or would like to do at all. So go ahead, Chief, if you have a better.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on Mr. Montry's question. Disbanding the code or eliminating the code, there would be no oversight for any buildings as far as life safety or fire protection that are required or could be enforced. That meaning that sprinkler systems, fire alarms, smoke alarms would not have to be maintained. Commercial kitchen hoods would not have to be maintained. As I said, the thousands of pages worth of code provisions that were in there would not be enforceable, and we wouldn't be able to enforce them to ensure for the safety, health, and welfare of the residents or the visitors to the community.
Is there another code,
So,
or is that, like, that's it, or?
there's the International Fire Codes, the one we've adopted. The NFPA has a set of codes as well that also require it. It's pretty much the industry standard. Again, because it's really best practices. Now, we understand in 1,000 pages worth of code material, there are things that we might struggle with, why is this code in place, or what's the purpose behind this rule? But in the key box requirement, it really does make sense. It does increase the safety, not only for the firefighters, it increases safety in emergency situations, but we've got to also look at the impact in non-emergency situations. So, kind of off the top of my head here, but probably in 2017, I'm thinking we responded to about 17 false calls or false alarms. So if you can imagine at 2 in the morning going out to a false alarm call about once every 3 days or once every 3 nights, where we don't know that whether it's a false alarm or not, and having to make a decision whether or not to break in the building when there's nothing that's evident, or wait there for a key holder that might be coming from far away if we can get a hold of them, if we have the ability to at night, or waiting for a fire and emergency to come out to us to expose itself with, if the building was on fire or there was water damage inside. That's kind of a tough position. Now, 72 times, if we just made the policy position that until we can ensure that there's no emergency inside, we're going to break through that front door and enter to make sure there's no emergency or confirm it, because we don't want to wait for a key holder to come or try and contact them. Then we would have had in 2017 roughly 70 sometimes that we did damage to a business that was unnecessary damage because it was a false alarm. Furthermore, our crews would not have been available for another emergency because we would have been responsible for securing the front of that business, either through like a restoration company to come out and put a temporary security to it, or waiting for the business owner to get there and then explaining to them that, well, we didn't know if there was an emergency or not.
Well, and that's
comes down that
I'm
there's
not,
not.
I'm not against it. I'm
Yeah.
against it being, I see it as a major freedom infringement for that. I think it's an amazing option. I think it's great but I feel like it should be the kind of thing that a business owner can say, no, I don't want to give a key to my building to the government.
And I understand and I can appreciate that position. I know that previously, and I think in the mid-90s or up until the mid-90s, I believe it was an option. And then the Code Council decided to make it a requirement and a provision of the code because of its importance and because the concerns that you have and the concerns that many business owners have are outweighed by the benefits in emergency services and public services. One other thing I wanted to touch on, because this is not unique and these questions aren't unique to our community, with regard to using that to break in or to gain access to the building. There's some data and some statistics, actually the research, and it would take me some time to find it, but we can certainly pull that up. The statistics have shown that in most burglaries where there are Knox boxes, they didn't even attempt to access that. Access was gained in some other way. because that is not the path of least resistance for getting into a building. Certainly that would be a difficult endeavor, take quite some time and effort to get in. There are far easier ways to access almost every building than working or trying to work into that commercial Knox box. From the fire department standpoint, we've got safety measures and procedures inside the department that are all secured in key-coded boxes so we can track the access in and out. They're also secured. They're actually as secure or maybe even arguably more secure than the narcotics that we carry in our ambulances. And those are pretty heavily federally regulated as far as provisions for protecting those. The keys are protected at least to that level, if not more. So we work pretty hard to try and protect not only the privacy and be respectful to the business owners, but again, as Captain Steinman said, to make sure that we're compliant as a community with the code.
Okay, thank you. Captain Steinman, carry on.
Any more questions?
Oh, you're done?
I'm done.
Oh, wow. Any more questions for Captain Steinman?
Mm-hmm.
No? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay, number 5, public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items only. Come on up.
Hello, I'm Michael Martin, 8342 Secor Road in Lambertville. I'm one of the business owners that they were talking about. I've talked with several of you and with them at length about the lock box. Sorry. I'm a dentist here in Lambertville, and like Craig was talking about, I'm concerned with the things I have to protect inside my building. I've had other issues with break-ins at the office. I live as close to my office as the fire department is to my office, so I could get there just as quickly. The only time that building is locked, people are not inside the building. If you need to break down the door to get in for a fire, I totally understand that, but when people are inside, the door is open. I believe, like you guys, that there should be an opt-out. I felt that it was against my rights to put a key outside. I know there are other ways to access the building by breaking the multiple windows and doors to access my office, but I think we can do better. I think there are ways to look at it. I understand that code is big, thick, and you guys are bound to adopt something, and I don't have an answer. I'm just frustrated as a citizen, and I just don't think that that was something that I should be forced to do, and how to secure it to my building. I'm not sure it can be secured. It's a wood structure, so I don't think that building can have that attached without drilling through it and bolting it. So those are my comments. I think the situation should be looked into more thoroughly and options given to us as business owners. I know we don't feel we have an option. I've got my form to fill out. I've got a couple other business owners with me that, what are our choices? Our question would be, if we are non-compliant, what are our fines? And it's not that we want to be non-compliant, because that is not my intention. I want the safety. I appreciate our fire department. They do a great job with the things they've done through the years here, keeping our community safe, so.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Goldsmith, do you want to briefly answer?
Well, if we reach a point, the board's going to have to make a decision whether to enforce the non-compliant business owners or not. Enforcement would be sought through the court. An injunction would be sought requiring them to comply. So it wouldn't be just a fine matter. It would be a court order. But that would be a decision that the board would have to make in terms of how you want to enforce it. That's how I see it unfolding.
Okay. Any more comments?
Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine. Happy New Year to everyone. This is in regards to information, Monroe County Sheriff's contract. I got some questions I'd like to ask the board. Is it reasonable for an employer to ask an employee to do a reasonable day's work for a reasonable day's pay? Is it reasonable for taxpayers who expect government officials to utilize tax dollars responsibly and to expect those government officials to supervise any services paid for by tax dollars? Is it reasonable for government officials who contract services that are paid for by tax dollars to expect those contracted to provide reasonable services? Do taxpayers have the right to challenge government officials when they believe that those services that are being contracted are not providing reasonable and adequate services? This is a question I just came up with when I'm thinking about these lock boxes. I think fire department has to have access to buildings. Here's my concern. If you can mandate a business to leave a key for access, can you mandate a private residence? That's the question I ask, because the bottom line is I ain't gonna give you my key. Pretty simple. So if you try to mandate that, you're gonna hear me up here screaming and yelling. That's my private residence. I may have materials in there that are dangerous too. Would have gasoline, maybe ammunition. I would have a lot of things in there that were dangerous too. So if you can mandate a business, and I'm not saying business owners have a right to voice that. I think they do. And I think the fire department has a valid point what they're making. It's pretty hard to kind of keep between the two. But what's my legal rights as a citizen in a country that says that I have private property, and if I put an access key out there, who has access to it? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've got an alarm system on my house and stuff. I don't want people breaking in. I realize they can break in anyway. I was a cop for 23 years. Believe me, I had a lot of break-ins. And if they want to get in, they can come in through the roof, they can come through the air vent situation, they can come in anywhere if they want to. The question is, can you mandate me to put a key in my house if you mandate somebody else to do it? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Jason Shepherd, 7235 Bent Creek in Temperance. I just want to address the 5940 bill question. The reason that I wasn't sure what it was is because it never made it to even committee process. So basically, the nuts and bolts of it were to allow townships to take ownership of roads outside of the road commission, outside of a state Act 51. There's a lot of legal wrangling about that as to how that would even work. So the bill had a lot of flaws in it that had to do with our Michigan Constitution and some other issues, which is why it never even got the committee process. So that's what that bill actually did. It would allow you to say, okay, I'm going to own this section of road. The problem becomes, like, if it's a road that's a certain trunk line, or maybe potential federal dollars could be included to fix it. If you own it, how does that funding work? So it became a complicated maze as to why it was never brought up in committee. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you for your comment.
Yep.
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. Maybe the sky didn't fall, but the ceiling at the historic District 1 fire station did. And only after some FOIAs were filed and a job was lost did the majority members of this board learn of the event, the repairs, and now mold. I trust the surplus funds and not budgeted funds of the fire department will be used. After all, this problem was not due to any wrongdoing by the fire department membership.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Judy Frankowski, 1115 Ashland Drive, Temperance. I kind of have to laugh because, anyway, now we have say that the road commission has money, which I know they really don't, but I thought it was kind of funny after we've all had to pay for our own subdivision roads. And it seems that we've known for years that Bedford Township only gets trickle-down money from Lansing. So I ask you, whoever can, to get to Lansing sooner than later and see that we do get our fair share of these monies. Which brings me to the rezoning issue on Stearns Road. I didn't see a map, so I'm really just talking in generalities here. I don't know what portion you're talking about. But history has shown that changing from R2A to C3, the tax benefit of doing this that we get from a C3 business is hardly worth the traffic safety impact it has on the neighborhoods for perhaps services we don't need. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
I'm Mark Warren. I'm a dentist, 7924 Secor Road. I commend the fire department. They do a great job. They put their safety and their lives at risk, and I value their contribution to our community. I do have a problem, though, with a lockbox with my key and my patient's information, possibly drugs, narcotics, whatever inside my office, that all of a sudden, whoever can get into that box has access to. On top of that, with the fire department, I'm not exactly clear on who has access to those keys. what circumstances allows them to access that building. Personally, I'm the last one in the building. When I lock it up and leave, it's just a building. So if anything happens to it, it's not worth risking anybody's lives over. It's just a building. So I really don't see the value of having all these multiple boxes through our community for other people that have the ingenuity to access these boxes. They know, hey, here's a good concentration of keys. Somebody that can figure it out, they have access to everybody's building. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Steinman, do you want to respond to that? Good, okay. Okay. Any more comments from the public? Oh, come on.
George Wells, 7297 Hidden Valley Drive. I've been to several of these meetings with respect to the rezoning. We've had a couple of meetings, the planning meetings, where we've had a full house. One of them, it was overflowed into another room. The citizens have made it very clear that we are opposed to this rezoning, primarily for safety, traffic. In one of the meetings, one of the panel members, excuse me if I get the terminology wrong, said, well, it'll take care of itself. We talk about roads all the time. Roads don't heal themselves. We need money for roads. A number of us in my neighborhood believe that it was not worth coming to this meeting tonight because it's a foregone conclusion that you've all made up your minds. You've made backroom deals. I personally believe that to be the case. I've had many conversations with many of Bedford residents. I fully expect you to pass, approve. I will point out that the variance that was requested for the access road on Secor was contingent upon a plan that was presented, and that plan was not accepted. It was modified. So in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal expert, but that should be effectively abrogated. And at least one panel member had stated that in one of the meetings himself. In fact, again, you have recordings of the meetings. He said he felt he was misled by things that were said with respect to that variance. There's an overwhelming number of the people who were notified of the...
Your time is up. Thank you for your comments.
Can you finish your sentence?
You can finish your sentence. Go ahead.
I'd like to hear.
I kind of lost my train of thought there, but there was a clear majority. And my question to you is, how is it a hardship? The variance is requested, it was presented as a hardship. How is it a hardship to someone who doesn't even own the property? Buy property that's properly zoned. Don't buy property that's not zoned for what you want to do. It's zoned for a reason, and those of us who bought property and have a vested interest in this are the ones who are suffering the hardship by this irresponsible behavior of all the people who have been involved with this so far.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, moving on to staff reports. Request for approval and direction regarding the funding for the mold remediation work for Fire Station 1.
Thank you, and would it be okay to just address the couple of questions?
No, go ahead.
Just briefly, in regards to Mr. Tisdale, the International Fire Code does not have any jurisdiction over residential housing, so it would not be something that could be or would be required for personal residences. The code is only for commercial buildings and businesses. And we certainly, just as a side note, we certainly, I understand at least, and Captain Steinman does as well, the challenges and the questions that were presented, and we've been presented both here tonight and presented through phone calls to the offices and that you have. We're respectful for that, and we understand it, and we're trying really hard to work with the businesses to help them in different ways that we can to still be compliant with the code and still meet the provisions of the code, but to make it so that it's a workable process for them. We have done some pretty creative things. I think that probably the best bet moving forward here is we'll try and collect some data from other communities of just the 14,000 that use these specific boxes. We are not the only ones that have run into questions like this, and we'll reach out and get some suggestions, as well as maybe try and work and network through the BBA and some other networks to see how other doctors, dentist offices, pharmacies, banks are dealing with this. So I think it's something that we certainly can continue working through and working on to make sure that we're both code compliant and we're satisfying the concerns of the business owners and the property owners. So, that being said, the request tonight and the memo in front of you is for both direction and for approval for the mold remediation. Mold remediation plan was put together by that company CEC a few months ago. We sent it out for bid, and we received the bids back with the low bid from AAA Standard Services in the amount of $16,091.54. The funding, again, the funding for this project was not provided for in the existing budget. When the existing budget was developed, there were no provisions for mold remediation. It's Station 1 for that, so we're looking for both approval to get the area back to where it's functional and can be used by the firefighters, as well as some direction on the funding.
Okay. Ms. Taterberry?
Did you say at a previous meeting that the insurance covered any of this?
No, it did not.
Oh, none of it?
We didn't have mold coverage.
Oh, we didn't have enough coverage, okay. So,
I think
to
it
answer the
had
question,
just not this type of mold coverage. There's certain, wasn't it something like that? No?
No. The way it covered, we had coverage for the damage of the building somewhat. That didn't even get covered because of how it happened. But then the mold from that, it wasn't covered at all.
okay, so then, my other question is to answer Ms. Keene's question, is this coming out of buildings and grounds or out of the fire fund?
Buildings and grounds.
Okay, so that's the general fund, not the fire fund, okay.
Any more questions?
I got a question for Phil, and this is a question I should have asked him before.
Too late.
The $500,000 millage that we just had approved, it's mainly for equipment, but does it have anything in it that would allow us to spend some of that money for this project? I don't know. We ought to look at the wording.
Yeah, I'd have to re-examine the ballot proposal language. My initial reaction is no, it wouldn't. I think it's for capital expenditures, which would not include, in this specifically, mold remediation. So that's right off the top of my head. I don't think it would. I don't think we can use those funds for this purpose.
Mr. Francis, the language is specific to apparatus, being fire trucks and equipment.
So,
Because I know at one time when we were talking about the wording on that, we had talked about maybe some major building repairs, but I think we did delete that.
I think that the board opted to focus on the apparatus and equipment with the millage at that time, yeah.
that refreshes my recollection,
Yeah,
yes. The initial draft of the ballot proposal did include language that probably would have allowed legally for funds to be withdrawn for that purpose, but then the scope was narrowed, and that's what went to the electorate, and it was narrowed to, as the chief says, equipment, apparatus purchases.
And I think it's good to know that.
It's a good question, yeah.
Any more questions for Chief?
Well, I just, do we know anything about any of these companies? I mean,
Well,
Or is
the
it
cheapest
very
one is the family-run company. I do know that, and I will,
well, what kind of, I mean, there's mafia families, I mean, what family are we talking about?
We, a number, probably a year and a half ago, we discussed getting a list of restoration companies that we would use for board ups for the fire department when we're called up to fires, and we've got our board up or close up to secure a property. The 3 bids that we have are from the 3 companies that complied with all the requests that we had, and we're familiar working with them in that they're the 3 companies that ultimately worked through the process to get themselves cleared as restoration companies to work, not on our behalf, but to work with us to help close up properties. So we're comfortable with all 3 of the properties in that we have a relationship with them, previous relationships for board ups.
And people who have used them have good things to say about them?
So far as we know, yeah.
I want to give kudos to Al, too. He talked them down 5% from their original bid. So,
All of them?
well, the one I believe we're recommending is the one that's $10,000 cheaper.
Well, I like that the one that's being recommended, like looking through the proposals, it's like, I feel like the one I actually know what they're charging it for. Like, I feel like it's the most readable proposal as well.
For what it's worth, Mr. Supervisor, I have dealt with this company on behalf of clients before. They've been well satisfied.
And I looked into it pretty heavy. They're a reputable company.
I-
All 3 of them are, but this one was,
Yeah, I've dealt with them in cleanup situations, and they've been well satisfied with the service provided. That's just, a couple of experiences that I've had with this company. I don't represent them, I don't know them, I just dealt with the client in the cleanup of a situation, and they were well satisfied.
okay. I look for a motion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept and approve the bid from AAA Standard Service Incorporated for repairs to Fire Station Number 1 in the amount of $16,091.54 as presented.
I'll second. Can
Okay.
we add a friendly amendment of where these funds are coming from? You said they're coming from buildings and grounds? Okay. Will you accept that friendly amendment?
Certainly.
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion?
Yeah, I do have a question. Is there going to be a contract with this, or are we just accepting the bid? I mean, who's going to go through and make sure that all these things are done?
Well, Dennis Kohler, would be involved, I'm sure.
The company that wrote the remediation program, my understanding is that it's got to be done up to their specifications, and they will review it after the fact to ensure that they can certify that the building is actually mold-free.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's been talked about, but this mold come from, when that building went down a foot, there was a little tear. So when it was brought back up, that little tear was never fixed, and that's where the leaks, the water was coming in from. And that was caught by what was that company that came in and did that?
The CEC, I believe.
Yeah, and that's how that was caught. But that's how it happened. There was a little tear in the roof.
Who missed it? They should be
Well,
paying the
nobody was
$16,000.
who's gonna catch it? There was
I
a
don't know.
company that came and looked at the roof, nothing was seen with the roof, right? We had the roof inspected, and it wasn't found, it was that small.
Hmm.
So, that's all it takes.
Mr. Supervisor, may I?
Mhm.
Nancy raises a good point, and I would just like to protect the fire department, to protect the township, to know that it is somewhere written that AAA will have to perform to the standard set by the company that did the inspection, and they will deliver a product for the price they said they would deliver a product to the satisfaction of that inspection company. Could we just make sure that that is somehow incorporated into the bid if it already isn't, so that there's no argument later? Because I don't want the inspection company to come back and say, you didn't follow these specs, and then have the other company say, well, that wasn't part of our bid. So I want there to be a marriage there, that they understand what the specs are, they'll perform to those specs, the work will be inspected, and it has to be to the satisfaction of, A, our building inspector, and maybe more importantly, B, the company that we engaged and paid to have the inspection done. Is that reasonable?
Oh, absolutely.
You want to take care of that, or you
Yeah.
want me?
It's up to you.
We gotta make it part of our motion.
I'm good with that.
Well, excuse me, Chief, but don't you think the attorney should draw that up? To make sure that it's,
We certainly can. I'll just,
I mean, it's just. a
Adam and
couple
I can work
sentences.
together to do that and make your motion
I
subject.
thought you tried to
that.
cut back on legal fees.
Yeah, when
Isn't it
makes
something we
sense.
can do? You,
When you call them up and talk baseball, but I'm talking about,
Hey.
this is in business.
here, I'm trying to save money, and there you go.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
want to
but we're taking
protect the
the money out of your
citizens.
budget, so
Yeah,
it's okay.
yeah. Okay.
Does there need to be anything in there for like up to or whatever, just like even on the first, I think it's the only thing that I saw within the proposals on the first page, price might change due to unseen area. Is there anything you have to do, like, put in there that's saying up to, shall not exceed, whatever? Yes or no? I don't, you know, I'm kind of asking, I guess.
Was this an area that was inaccessible, Adam, for their inspection, so they don't know what looms in there? Is that what we're dealing with?
Frankly, they're stripping it back down to the concrete walls and removing the wood. So the option was given the mold remediation to either clean all of that wood and replace it or clean it. I believe, if I understand it correctly, what they were explaining was, well, if we clean all of that wood, we don't know what's behind that wood. Being that, with the uncertainty of that and the concerns that we have, the use of the room right now, it's more prudent to remove that wood, get it out of there, and instead of trying to clean it and then come back and say, oh, there was spores that were missed. So I think that's probably largely a non-issue because we're removing it instead of.
And this bid that we've received and that the board is voting on tonight requires the removal of the wood, correct? Okay, so that should take care of that issue.
Okay.
Good question, though.
I call the question.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 6-0. Thank you, Chief. Okay, there's no old business, new business, request for approval of vouchers for payment, Ms. Hirschberger.
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $154,308.03. Fire District, $20,263.10. Police Fund, $1,918.51. Park Fund, $1,828.36. Library Fund, $5,065.91. Downtown Development Authority, $779.92. Sewer O&M Fund, $66,205.51. Trust and Agency Fund, $4,645.75, for a grand total of $255,015.09.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Item 8B, request for approval to rezone a portion of parcel number 5802-032-055-60, 3199 Stearns Road, from R2A, from one family residential to C3 general business. The applicant would like to come on up.
Good evening, Chairman and Board. Pleasure to be here this evening. I think you've seen the reports and have the information and have had it for a while and heard a lot of the comments back and forth. So I'm here to answer questions. Otherwise, I don't have a lengthy presentation or anything to make. If
Okay,
you have some
anybody have any
questions,
questions?
down here.
Ms. Tinneberry? For the
Hi.
record, could you state your name, please?
Yes,
and address?
yes, sorry. Jim Jacobs, Jacobs Architects, 25 Washington Street, Monroe, Michigan.
Thank you.
On the map, on the 2.79 acres, it shows a detention, existing wetlands, I'm sorry, existing wetlands coming in. Is that going to be mitigated? What's the deal? What's going on with that?
Through the site plan review process, once we know what is proposed on those and their final scenario of the tenant for those, it may have some adjustments made to it. That's all going to have to go through DEQ in order to have any remediation done with it. At this point, there's no final plans, but there has been talk of adjustments to it, but all that would have to go through proper channels for approval.
Okay, so, okay, something will have to be done with it through, as the DEQ determines.
That's correct, yep.
I had another question, but I'll pass for now till I find it.
Any more questions from anybody on the board?
I'm troubled by the road situation. I drive that road at least twice a day, every day, and it's a problem right now. That road needs to be widened, either a turning lane or something done. We need to work with the road commission to see, and we've already talked to them a little bit about that, but we need to press them on that, because I could see a problem that's here now, and I think a safety issue right now being made worse if it's not improved and anything is put there.
I mean, just so,
Just a thought.
just so everybody's clear, we're not looking at the first page where you've got the third parcel. It's the second page where you've got they've cut out that parcel off Stearns Road. And just so everybody knows, I am working with State Representative Jason Shepard, Dale Zorn. I'm working with different people at the Road Commission. That area is an issue, but let's just be honest. You're not waiting 10 minutes to get out of your neighborhoods and 10 minutes to get through lights. It's one light and maybe a minute or two to get out of the neighborhoods. I drive it every single day. And that's the question I ask to everybody that tells me this traffic is so bad over there. How long does it take you to get out of your neighborhood? And the answer typically is a minute or two. Or it takes me one traffic light to get through, okay? And I take real offense to backdoor deals. Let me tell you something. Everything that's brought to this township is open, and it's in front of the board. Everything's done in public, so I don't know what to say about it just right now. I mean, we're gonna make a decision on something. If we don't agree with it, you vote no. If you like it, you vote yes. But I could tell you something right now, Mr. Francis, that something's gonna go on this property. There could be 80 homes on this property right now.
And
that would-
with no zoning.
With no
That's
zoning
correct.
change
I
and with
agree.
no, I mean, it could happen. And that would add a lot of stuff too. If you don't like the property and what's going on right here, right, go look at Lewis and Stearns, okay? Some of them people are upset because they would like to have seen a Walmart over there instead of 4 major apartment going over there and what's going over there right now. Okay, we kind of get to line ourselves out a little bit with what's going on here. Yeah, we could use a turning lane, absolutely, and it's being talked about. There's grants that I'm looking at right now to go from Secor to Summerfield, absolutely. Could it use a turn lane? You just heard Mr. Shepard, we are way underfunded with roads funds. The Road Commission does not have the monies to widen the road, but we can't stop growth. That's what I try to explain. We cannot, this board does not stop growth. I get tons of phone calls about the Summerfield and Stearns, the Dollar General. We you know, if the property is zoned for what they want to do there, they can move forward. You know, so we have to keep up the best we can with what's going on with these roads. You know, Secor Road, Secor from Stearns to State Line. At certain times of the day, it's a mess. But guess what? Certain times of the day at Dean and Jackman, it's a mess because of schools being let out and buses. You know, during rush hour at State Line, it's Smith and Secord, It's backed up to state lines some days. We're looking at what we can do to make that better. We're getting creative. And I know everybody, some people don't like the thought of a roundabout at Jackman and Smith, but those are the ideas, those are the creative ways we're coming up with funds. And that's what we have to do, is keep pushing forward, keep coming up with ideas, and we'll make things happen. But those are just my 2 cents on it. But as far as backdoor deals, Mr. Montry.
A lot of this has happened before my time. I've tried to read up on everything I can get my hands on it, and at the risk of revealing my ignorance, I thought that the entrance is off of Secor. Is that not accurate?
One of them. There's 2 entrances, one off
So there is an
Stearns.
entrance off of,
Right there's the curb cut on Stearns, there where
Okay.
the orange is. and
but
then
there's a
curb
full,
cut
there's a
right
full
where the yellow-
nother,
Where the yellows, that's where the variance came from that he talked about. If you want to address that too, the variance that he's talking about, originally, what he's explaining is when the variance originally was given to go from, the 100 feet to the 60 feet, okay, was explained to where, okay, all 3 parcels, the whole plan has to go through. Okay, the plan's changed. The plan was originally this.
yeah, with the
Okay.
whole, all the way out.
Now it's this, it's less.
Yep.
So, Mr. Goldsmith, would you explain that really quick?
Sure. The maps that you have in front of you, the one that I have in front of me, I think you have in front of you too, it was generated through the Planning Commission review, our Bedford Township Planning Commission review. So it shows a 60-foot strip of property running from Secor Road to the east, and that will access what's been labeled and identified as commercial lot number 1, approximately 3.732 acres, the west portion of which is already Zone C3, the east portion of which is the subject of the rezoning tonight, which is currently R2A, and the request is rezoned to C3. So that lot will have a primary access point from Secor Road. Then if you look to the north of that lot, you will see what's been identified and labeled as Commercial Lot 2. It's a 3.006 acre parcel, access to which will be supplied from the frontage that exists on Stearns Road. So you'd be coming south from Stearns Road to access that lot. Ingress and egress will be for that lot. Again, the west portion of that lot that's outlined in pink, at least on my diagram, already Zone C3. The east portion of which is the subject of tonight's rezoning is zoned R2A, requested to be rezoned to C3. So there will be 2 points, one from Stearns and one from Secor.
I guess I'm asking more for you to explain to the gentleman that came up with the concern that we're not approving what was originally requested.
Well,
And the contingent that was put on the frontage variance off Secor Road, okay, was contingent upon the thing being approved. Well, it's changed, and that's what his question was, right?
That's
Yes.
right.
I want to get into, hold on, that's just it, that's right. Hold on, you got to come up here for comments. So go ahead and finish it.
Well, the request that went to the Board of Zoning Appeals was to give a variance on the frontage for that lot, for what's been identified as lot number 1. Okay, that was always the request, that that lot could then be accessed and have frontage on Secor Road, because our zoning ordinance for the C3 zoning district requires 100 foot of frontage. So that variance was provided to reduce that frontage requirement from that which is in our zoning ordinance to the 60 feet that exists there. So yes, the overall plan that was presented that night was changed, but the request pertained to that lot that's already Zone C3 to provide access to that. Because it's Zone C3, there's a certain C3 requirement, and one of the conditions placed on that night was that the rezoning actually occur for that lot, which has been identified as commercial lot number 1.
I just wanted to clear up that concern.
Farther to the east, they have, the landowner or whoever has it on option hasn't come back other than to identify a conceptual plan, which would be residential development in that area. There was a request for rezoning from R2A to C3 for what's identified as commercial lot 3 on the map that you have in front of you. That request was withdrawn by the applicant when they appeared for the public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, which they can do. They can withdraw that and still move forward with commercial lot 1 and 2. They did that. The Planning Commission at that meeting voted, I believe it was 5-2 in favor, to recommend the rezoning to the Township Board. Does
Okay.
that answer your question?
Yes. Any more comments from board? Mr. Montre, do you have a question?
No, because, Mr. Francis, that's what, like, the biggest concern is Stearns Road traffic, correct?
That's what I understand, yes.
Yeah. So
That's what
which-
I was speaking.
That's what I would think with it having 2 entrances. It just seems like that, because there's plenty of space on Secor. They got a turn lane, 2 lanes both ways. That's what, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly when you were saying that.
Maybe this would help. What you're saying, Mr. Montre, is that I think what you're thinking is that someone could turn into commercial lot 1 from Secor and access commercial lot 2. And I'll ask Mr. Jacobs, if I may,
That
Mr.
question's been
Supervisor,
asked
will
already.
there be connectivity between those 2 lots? And could someone come in Secor, access both, and then exit Secor if they chose to? Or will they be divided so that commercial lot 2 can only be accessed and exited through Stearns Road?
Well, there's, at that meeting, there was some discussion related to that, and the general understanding when we left there was that the Planning Commission desired connectivity. So we still have a lot of a process to go through site plan review, through the township agency.
And that's what DDA wants as well.
Yeah. Now, that hasn't been finally determined. We've looked at several plans that have looked at both ways. So ultimately, we still have to get that through in some form, but my understanding was from the commission that they desired that connectivity.
All right, so let me just make this statement, then I'll be quiet. So this is a rezoning. If you choose to rezone this property that's requested to be rezoned, which is the east parts of these lots 1 and 2, then both of those parcels can be used for any principal permitted use allowed in our C3 zoning district, or with approval, any special land use approval use that's set forth within our C3 zoning district. So that's step 1. The next step will be there's site plan review process that has to go through. There are standards that have to be adhered to throughout that process. This is step 1. And if you rezone it, then anything allowed in the C3 can be built there so long as it complies with site plan approval process, and going through that process with buffers and so forth. So,
But we're focusing on just the rezoning night.
You're
Like you said, they have a
focusing
long
just
ways to
on-
go.
You're
With
focusing
site plan
just-
approval, so
just on the rezoning. And when you get to the point where you get to site plan approval and there's a proposed development that is going to go in there, then you've got the reviewing agency, one of which is the Monroe County Road Commission, and has jurisdiction to determine and dictate to a certain extent what happens with the roadway, whether there will be deceleration lanes required, that sort of thing. So I can't guess at what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but it will be part of the review process.
Ms. Hirschberger?
So right now, these 2 parcels we're looking at, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, are actually split zone parcels, which this township does not like having split zone parcels.
No municipal unit of government likes having split zone parcels, and you're correct, they are split zone parcels, because this area was, I'm not going to say always contemplated to be for commercial development, but as the township grew, it was slated for commercial development. And that's why from Secor Road to the east, it's already Zone C3, and then there's that demarcation line, and then farther to the east is the R2A. So yes, the parcel 1 and 2 are split zoned.
Okay, Ms. Tenderberry?
But that's what we're remedying tonight, supposedly. I mean, they won't be split zone when we're done.
Well, the proposed parcels, no, they won't. They'd be C3.
Right.
And I'll say one other thing. I don't know how this board is going to vote tonight. I have no idea. I never do when I come to these meetings. But what I would like you to do is to look at your professional planner's conclusion, and there's certain bullet points there that if you chose to rezone this property would support that rezoning, and these are facts that's cited by Lucy Fortin, that you could incorporate into a motion. So if you're inclined to do that, I would recommend that you do that. On the flip side of the coin, if you're inclined to reject the rezoning request, then you need to provide logical reasons why you are rejecting this rezoning request. You have to keep in mind what the master land use plan is for this property, which is addressed by Ms. Fortin in her report, and the other facts that she brings up. So you want to address logical reasons, whatever course of action you decide to take. Either way, support it with logical reasons.
Okay. Ms. Tenderberry?
Just a couple things not related to this exactly, but I'll get to this. Mr. Francis said, well, there are options. Could we move that roundabout from over there where I don't think it should be to here? I mean, this is a much more needed spot for a roundabout.
If you were allowed to just
rather
take
than-
federal funding and do whatever you want with it, you could, but that federal funding is specific for Smith and Jackman, and you know that, Nancy. You're just playing.
I'm just saying we could try.
No, you
Okay,
can't.
okay. That, I read through this whole large packet. I read all of the people from the public that came and spoke at both public hearings. And whereas I think that, you know, we need to take into consideration the public view, I didn't see any really strong evidence for not doing this from my perspective. The traffic is going to be traffic no matter if the people take it and develop it the way it is from in R2A. Think of the number of homes they can get in there, and every house has 2 cars, and 2 cars a day going in and out, and buses, and I just don't see that it would lessen the traffic at all. The other thing I think is a very wise, well, Phil, you said something about site plan. We don't approve site plans, that's just
No,
at the
planning commission. Yeah, but there's
So-
stringent requirements and
Yes,
standards.
absolutely, but it won't come to this board. But
No.
Nothing is shown on here, just the zoning, so we have no idea what the developer has totally in mind, and that'll be taken up later. I really, really like this entrance from Secor Road because it gives a service drive, which brings a lot of that traffic off of the intersection. If they're going to these parcels here, whatever they might become, you can come through, and the planning commission can require that there be mobility through the different developments there. So I think that's incumbent on the planning commission to make sure that happens.
Can I add to your, okay, say when this development continues down, the ultimate plan, when it's fully developed, is, you know, we would probably want to connect sidewalks to adjacent neighborhoods.
Yes.
I mean, so right there alleviates the problem when we all know 2 kids got hit, you know, over there. So now you have how many neighborhoods that connect to that? You have Captiva off Smith Road, you have Green Hills, you have Deer Creek, yeah, isn't it? I mean, that'll all be able to have rideability and walkability to this area, the DDA, that we've created over the years to make it walkable, to put traffic signals up so people could walk through.
Yeah.
It's part of the master plan. I mean, we all have an opportunity as citizens to come to these master plans, and we spend a lot of money for them. It's part of it.
Yeah, that's the area is subject to the sidewalk ordinance.
Right. And again, the planning commission can make that stipulation during the plan review,
Yeah.
so.
I expect the DDA, depending on what you do, I expect the DDA, even though the DDA line ends short of what will ultimately be the full commercial lot if you choose to rezone it, to be a proponent of connectivity, mobility. Your professional land use planner is a huge proponent of walkability, connectivity, mobility to allow pedestrian, bicycle traffic in between these commercial lots. And that's what this area's master land use plan for, is mixed use, which includes commercial, neighborhood commercial type development. So
Where
that's,
does that DDA line end?
it is on one of the.
DDA line ends right here at the yellow.
Oh, at the yellow?
The yellow.
Yeah,
So-
I think generally
That's the line.
All
where
the
it's at.
commercial area
All the
of those
commercial.
two lots were included in DDA.
Yeah.
Is there any opportunity to include the rest of it in the DDA?
Not
at all?
without,
No, I've given the legal opinion that we should not do that because of the
you take the chance of people pulling out
of
who are already in it.
taxing authorities of opting out that are not. And that's
They
what,
could do that anytime anyway. They don't have to stay in. I mean, each year they can take that opportunity to opt out, but I'm thinking of the Catholic property over there too, if that ever sells. I
well,
know that's not in it.
that's been discussed at DDA meetings, so that could
But
be
we've come to
something
the
that,
determination of not moving forward with that.
yes, not at the
We
present
have?
time.
Well, our
I don't
DDA,
remember
our
voting on
DDA
that.
board.
Oh. Okay, I would like to make a motion, unless there's an objection. Okay, I was going to use the motion from the planning commission, Phil, but if you would rather I construct something from Lucy's points.
I
Okay,
think the
I'll do.
planning commission motion, for the most part, incorporated her bullet points that she set out in her recommendation.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to approve the rezoning of a portion of parcel number 5802-032-055-60 from R2A Single Family Residential to C3 General Commercial located east of Secor Road, otherwise known as 3199 Stearns Road, Lambertville, Michigan 48144, for the proposed portion of the area of parcels identified as number 1 and 2 only, removing the area of proposed parcel number 3? Is that supposed to be in there? No.
That,
Okay.
we're not addressing
Take
that. That has been removed.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was the wrong one. With the subject, did you say, did I make something? Oh. The subject portion is adjacent to existing C3 zone frontage along Secor and Stearns Road. It is consistent with the township's master plan goals and policies. It follows the master plan future land use designation for mixed uses. It logically locates commercial land uses in the core business district of the township. It is supported by adequate utility infrastructure. While development of the property will have some environmental impacts, similar impacts would result from any land development, including residential. A transition between the commercial area and the existing single-family homes to the east and south of the property is preserved, and screening between the commercial and the residential uses is required and will alleviate some of the possible negative impacts of potential commercial uses. And I apologize, Trudy, I said I would never make long motions like that.
I'll support.
May I just also say that I have not talked to one other person on this board about this. I have not done any backroom discussions or I just see it as a trustee of this township. I think it makes good land use and planning, and the land's going to be developed one way or the other, so I approve the economic development. That's just my personal, you don't have to put that in the motion, Judy.
We have a motion in support of Mr. Montry. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Thank you. Okay, item 8C, request for approval of a revised Bedford Township Personnel Manual. Ms. Hirschberger.
Before you is the personnel manual with all the changes I received I did get a comment a little while ago before the meeting about changing 5.0 performance evaluation from 6 months to 12 months, but other than that, I've received no other comments on it. Unless anyone has questions or comments about the change that was asked.
Mr. Francis?
Not about the changes, but what was left out. We had a half a dozen or so policies that may not have been officially adopted. And
That's
maybe we ought to do that. Not necessarily in this motion, but those are good policies, they're well-written. I think we ought to officially adopt them if we have not done that.
Yeah, I went back and looked, and all the policies, well, they were called policies that were in the personnel were not approved by a board at all, none of them. And if we want to approve those policies, maybe we should put them in our policy manual rather than our personnel manual. Just my thoughts.
They fit better there.
That'd be the best practice, yes.
Ms. Stenberry?
I just want to thank Trudy for her hard work. I have personally waited a long time for this to come to the board and to be approved from 2008. I think, it's long overdue. Things change. It's not, in my opinion, perfection, but it's close enough to perfection that I am agreeing to the changes that Trudy has made and the work she's put into it. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I too would like to thank you for your hard work on that.
Thank you.
And I know, Ms. Stenberry kind of threw her arms up last year, so I appreciate us finishing it and getting it here, so.
Does anyone have a problem with that change to the performance evaluations? I just want to make sure, because it was approved by the board to do 6 months, so if we're changing it to 12 months, I want to make sure everyone's okay with that.
Fine with me.
I'm the one that brought the performance evaluation to the board, and in looking at the ones that have been done, I think hats off to you. They're being done well, and I think it's worked out exactly as I had hoped. I think the employees have a better gauge of where they are, and I think it's a good tool, so thank you.
I actually brought it up to her going to the 12 months.
Yeah,
After doing it for, how long have we been doing it? A year and a half maybe, or we've done 3 of them
Yeah.
up to this point?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just kind of feel like going to a yearly thing,
The only suggestion I would make is based on what we had implemented, this board would just want to say whether it's the June or December. Just go ahead and make a decision,
Yeah, because I can throw that in.
because you can throw that in,
too.
but those were the 2 times, so which is, and the suggestion would be likely December or January so that it doesn't conflict with budget.
That's
'cause
what I would say.
June is fairly busy,
Yeah.
all the budget
December.
work.
See, I would have went January.
January's
Just to
fine.
finish out the
That's fine.
year and
Just do
then
January.
do them right after.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think.
So we're making that change tonight?
Right, to 5.0 performance evaluation. We'll change it to 6 months with January being the month.
So just to be clear, the next one that would be due would be a year from now.
Correct, and I think you meant to say 12 months.
Yes, sorry, 12 months.
Yeah, 12 months from this January.
Correct.
Okay.
Then I'd like to make a motion that we approve the Township of Bedford's Personnel Manual with the changes to 5.0 with the 12 months in January and the rest presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supportive of Ms. Stenberry. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clement?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Okay, at this time, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Come on up.
I ended, so I'll start this time. Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. First off, in regards to 8B, I think some of the concerns were related to the C3. The other thing is, if the township can dictate things, then let's dictate that the developers start paying for the roads. And the backdoor issue, I believe, is surrounding the issue that the supervisor's office has publicly admitted that they had been working with Mr. Bates for well over a year on developing this property, and If I have my information correct, State Rep Shepherd is the real estate person for this property, which is neither here nor there, but I think that's where the concerns are coming from. Secondly, with the interest in beautification and not wanting to spread rumors, what was the budget for them last year? What is the projected budget that was for this year? And if it was to be taken away from them, what would be the sole purpose for doing that? And lastly, you have written a policy manual that applies strictly to the non-elected officials, just for the public to know. I'm going to share with you a concern, and I'm really getting fed up with the abuse that I am having to put up with when I come to this township hall. And I am suffering this abuse by our supervisor. I was here the other day for a Lewis Avenue committee meeting, and I won't go into that because there are some real concerns with that group. But I had already preset a meeting with someone in the Treasurer's Department. It is my understanding that our elected official, our treasurer, has the authority in that department. I'm also under the impression that our elected official in the clerk's department has the authority there. That our supervisor is not the sole boss of everybody and everything in this township. It's my understanding that I pay the wages and that these people are elected by the taxpayers. So I had an appointment, and I went through the doors because it was already prearranged, and I went back to the desk where I was to have my meeting. And during that meeting, I was approached and reprimanded for entering into an area that is off limits to the public, that only employees are allowed to be there. Now, this was an interruption to a meeting I had with another person. Well, I made sure that our elected official, Mr. Francis, was notified. I have asked for a written content of a meeting of disciplinary action. Now, I've already filed with the state misconduct charges and a misuse of office. I also then went to Ms. Hirschberger in the clerk's department because I will be, again, getting permits signed for the Adopt a Road program. It was the very first year of the supervisor serving as a supervisor where I was again verbally attacked. While I was trying to get these permits signed, I was set up on a phone conversation with the township's attorneys where illegal activity took place without my permission. And I have filed police reports for verbal attacks. Now, I understand that the supervisor has physically
Ma'am,
attacked
could you
another
please
resident.
address the supervisor, please?
I'm not going to look at you, you disgusting.
You need,
I am addressing the attorney, okay?
you need to address the supervisor.
I'm addressing
or-
the board.
You,
I
in
am
this meeting, I run the meeting, not you. You address the
This is my
supervisor
time,
in
and you
this board.
constantly have
You
obstructed
need
my
to address
time
the
and my
supervisor.
rights to speak.
I treat everybody
Well,
the same
no,
up
you
here.
don't. No, you do not.
Finish your comments, but
So
address the
at any rate,
supervisor.
I would like to have Ms. Hertzberger is
Ma'am.
also going to address her
she's not
rules
listening.
and regulations for what is expected for the conduct in her department. I will be seeking possibly a restraining order so that I can come to this township hall and do business, and that I can attend the Lewis Avenue corridor meetings without threat of abuse, harassment, intimidation, and fear. So the public needs to know this is the stuff that's going on.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Good evening again, Logan Tisdale. That's the reason why I ask these questions. These numbers come right from the sheriff's contract summary. In November 2018, 4 officers logged 288.5 hours on patrol, investigated 19 accidents, and together that costs us the patrol time, which doesn't mean they did any investigation. It costs us township $12,405.50 at $43 an hour, which is the 80-20 rate, or pretty close to that, a couple cents off. They wrote 0 traffic citations. 2 officers went 125.5 hours on patrol, investigated 20 accidents, wrote 36 traffic citations. That means that for the whole month of November of 18, 2 officers wrote 3 out of every 4 traffic tickets in Bedford Township. while 30 officers that logged hours there, 28 of them only wrote 12 tickets. One guy went in October, November, went 203 hours, 203.25 hours on patrol, and wrote 0 traffic citations. That cost the taxpayers of this county, or that township, $8,739.75. In October, one officer wrote 22 traffic citations in 33 hours on patrol, 33 and 5 hours on patrol, investigated 7 accidents. Assuming he wrote a ticket for every accident, that means in 33.5 hours he wrote 15 tickets. That's pretty darn good. Maybe that guy ought to be the officer of the year. 8 guys went 463.75 hours on patrol, investigated 16 accidents, and wrote 6 tickets. That cost the taxpayers of this township $19,941.25. That's assuming that the 6 tickets were written on patrol and not on the 16 accidents. If they were written on the one of the 16 accidents, we paid $19,941.25 for 0 activity on patrol. It's impossible. Pay me that money, I'll go out there and I'll write tickets. I'll find them. If those guys can write 22 tickets or in 33 hours on patrol, somebody finds there's people violating the law here. If you think that this is making our township safer, you are deadly wrong. I know a little bit about police work. Believe me, if I was the sheriff, they're lucky I'm not the sheriff. They are lucky that I'm not the sheriff, because there'd be people answering for this. This is unacceptable for anybody that's a policeman that knows anything about it. There's nobody on this board knows more about police work than I do. Nobody. And as a state trooper, I look at this, I'm thinking to myself, we spend almost $20,000 for people to ride around for what? Now you need to hold these people accountable. Because I'm going to come up here and I'm going to beat the drum. I've already done 6 months of work. When I get the last December's thing here, I'm going to give you a yearly tally of what these guys did. In 6 months, the first 6 months of 2018, 53 people logged hours in Bedford Township, besides the 10 people. So that was 43 officers logged hours in Bedford Township, besides the 10 people that work here. I don't even know from looking at the statistics who actually works the township, the contract. So if you don't know who does this and they're bringing everybody that work down here, how can you possibly know how to deal with the 35 days that we give these guys? How can you deal with the overtime? How do you figure that out? I'm confused. I tell you, I look at these numbers and stuff, and I'm not bad with numbers, but I have no idea how you can control this. And I'm frustrated. I've been beating this drum now for 2 years, and nobody seems to care. It's taxpayers' dollars that we're paying here. This comes out of hard-earned people that are retired, that are working hard and doing their job and trying to pay taxpayers money, and we're contracting with people that can ride around for all these hours and not produce anything. Now you're saying, well, traffic tickets don't matter. That's not true. When you're a police officer, you have 2 responsibilities: to answer calls and to do traffic work. I don't care what you look like. Whether highway patrol, state police, that's what your 2 jobs are. Whether you're a city police officer, township police officer, county police officer, 2 jobs: investigate crime and take traffic enforcement. That's why we have traffic laws. They didn't write them up in Lansing just to fill up paperwork. And we generate money through those things. That money should be coming back to us. We're not getting anything for it. But you're not getting safety out there. We had 495 accidents in Bedford Township in the first 11 months of 2018. I haven't seen what happened in December. My guess is it'll be close to 550. That's about average every year. We have 550 accidents in Bedford. 1 out of every 6 accidents happen in Bedford Township in the whole county. And wow, we got more traffic down here. Yeah, but you know what? If you did some traffic work, maybe we could reduce those. That's not asking much, is it? You people are supposed to be watching this. I'm watching it better than you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public?
Judy Frankowski, 1115 Ashland Drive. Wow. I just think it's sad that the people at Secor and Stearns just felt so defeated that they didn't even show up. So hopefully in the future, maybe you can listen to people's silence. And also, Mr. Perrone, you say what a mess it is at Lewis and Stearns. It's because, I'm president of Bedford Watch, it's because we, how does it go? We won the war but lost the battle. So if there weren't so many poor rezoning decisions made by boards that preceded you or preceded this board, it wouldn't look like that. It would look like houses in a nice neighborhood. So please don't blame Bedford Watch, don't blame the citizens of Bedford, because they did vote not to have that rezoning. So again, it's sad the way it looks now, and it certainly was not our choice.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Tim McAfee, 9837 Pamela Drive in Temperance. First of all, Trudy, if I may ask, is it proper to
Just address the chair.
address her?
It's that simple.
Okay. Trudy, do I understand correctly that to begin a recall campaign, we have to have the final tote count from the Monroe County Board of Elections approval, and then we take a certain percentage of that and then write the recall petition, then that petition is approved, and then it can be put on the ballot? I got a limited time. You can think about that one. Mr. Francis.
Can you please address the chair, though? You can ask your questions, just address the chair.
Okay. Probably a question fit for Mr. Francis would be, since this building was built when Walt was supervisor, I believe, our human resources costs have gone up dramatically. Would it be a simple, like a Q&A program to plug into the records in Mr. Francis's office to come up with a history on not only a year-to-year, but month-to-month spreadsheet, so to speak, to compare our human resources cost in total, not only from month to month to month, but do that simultaneously with year to year to year over the years since this township hall has been built? And my last question, I would direct to the chair, but probably more, or not last question, Mr. Clements. TC, you've got some experience, as I understand it, with the federal government. And it's much better to do business with friends at the Old Boy Network, as it's known. And for example, if, just say, what if? Back in the 1980s, ran on on-demand air charter service, kept the automotive plant safe in this part going overnight. Used to have dinner in the 70s, or a drink every other Friday night with Harold Lou. In the 80s, while I was running the on-demand air charter company involved in the aviation industry, got to be really good friends with the Cleveland General Aviation District Office. And in the 90s, went back to a previous occupation when I used to run the glass program and teach at the Toledo Museum of Art, and got involved with charitable stuff and the economic social elite of not only Michigan, but Ohio. I've had a really good, interesting life. In 1967, stood next to Jay Leno in Brondy's showroom when the first 427 Cobra was ever delivered. Gordie Howe was my uncle. My Uncle Gordie taught me to ice skate on the ice on the Turtle Ponds off Kentucky Avenue in Monroe when I was 8 years old. Anyway, TC. My Uncle Al used to tell me, who has to be a best friend, we call him my Uncle Al, there's only one thing in this world better than free. And the answer is a free truck to Hollow Aid. But if, as I was discussing with Mr. Graham and Mr. Goldsmith on speakerphone earlier today, the only thing better if you were going to sue a, let's say, for instance, a unit of government, would be not only to go after the individual, but the township board, the county board, all the way up to the Congress of the United States of America. And if you were smart enough to file a whistleblower's lawsuit before that happened, you could get the government to pay for the whole thing and make money doing it. Would that be correct, DC? Anyway, if you could comment. And finally, through the chair again, probably a question for Mr. Graham, or Mr. Goldsmith. I'm sorry, Phil. I've got a concussion. I was attacked at church. Yeah, I think I've made the decision. I was talking to Mr. Goldsmith and Mr. Graham earlier today about whether Jeffrey Freiger, Bill Schuette, or the $5,000 an hour suits down there kitty corner with the Capitol in Pennsylvania Avenue would be, wrapping up, would be the appropriate one to use. The answer is all three. You use Jeffrey Freiger for local, personal. You use Bill Schuette for
Sir, your comments are done. Your time is,
state, and you use the $5,000.
Any more comments from the public? Come on up.
How shall I address you, Mr. Supervisor? You made several comments that were, well, you
What's your
said that
name
you
and
talked
address?
to several people.
Name and address for the record, please.
George Wells, 7297 Hidden Valley Drive, Lambertville. You said that you talked to several people who said they only have to wait a minute or two or whatever it was you said to get out of the subdivisions. You clearly didn't hear the comments from all of the people. We had a long line of people who got up and talked about how they can't get out of Green Hills or Hidden Valley and turn left. They have to turn right. So you said you drive it every day. I do too. I live in Hidden Valley. And I'm going to tell you, there are many times I've sat there 10 minutes and finally turned right. There are many times I've sat through that light 5 times. There are many times I've sat there because it's the second highest accident rate intersection in the entire county. So you clearly haven't done your homework. So I don't know what your story is. And you said you're offended about my comment about backroom deals, like the gentleman who spoke before me. Unfortunately, I had a lot of years in the corporate world, and I've seen firsthand how these things operate. I don't believe you. I don't trust you. And I hope that some of the folks here, I want to just make a quick comment.
Please address the chair, please.
I want to make a quick comment with respect to these lock boxes. I didn't come here for that. I'm not an expert in the International Fire Code specifically. I am a construction expert, and I've worked with the codes. I've been in construction for going on 45 years. Generally speaking, strictly speaking, no, there's no grandfathering provision. However, building codes are generally not enforced retroactively. And my entire time in this industry, which includes having done fire investigations, I've never known any building codes to be enforced retroactively. That's one thing. Secondly, the ICC codes, all of them to my knowledge, and I'm generally familiar with the International Code Council, all give the authority having jurisdiction, or as we say in the trade, the AHJ, the flexibility to interpret the code in the way that makes the most sense, okay? So it's not that he can't go in and say, in the case of a wood building, for example, that you have to have this box that is, you know, made of titanium or whatever it's made of, okay? When somebody can actually, or a house that has vinyl siding and on one side and drywall on the other where somebody could go through it with their fist. The codes are designed so that human beings, real people, interpret them in real life situations, okay, to what makes sense. So I feel for these folks, and I do, the few people who said that, I'm one who doesn't believe in the government overstepping its authority. And I truly believe that this board has overstepped its authority. And I believe that the fire department, and I support the fire department, as others have said here, with respect to these boxes. I think it's a good idea. If I had one of those businesses, I, in all probability, would voluntarily put one of those boxes on my building. But if I had a wood building or something like that where the box is the strong point and somebody could just put their fist through or a brick through a window, I could see where they wouldn't want to spend the $500 or so. But as a final comment to you, I would like to ask the question. I'm sure you won't answer it. Well, I'll find out. Are you all up for reelection at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
And I don't normally do this, but what constitutes backdoor? What in your mind is thinking was backdoor?
Well, I
what
believe
happened?
that Mr. Bates and Mr. Saylor, it's a good old boy network. I
Well,
believe,
how?
I was a.
Be specific.
I'm sorry?
Be specific.
Well, I
How?
believe that you guys have conversations. You don't show any evidence to me as a citizen that you've listened to any of the comments.
No, but back to the backdoor deal. It's that question I'm addressing. What do you think has been done that constitutes a backdoor deal? Because I don't know what you're talking about.
I believe
and
that
you're
you.
saying you don't believe me. I want to know what
I
in your
believe
mind
that
is.
you, members of the board, probably have talked about these things with the developers or have friends,
Well, absolutely.
buddies.
Do you know that when somebody comes in with well, hold on, I'm telling them. When somebody comes in with a business idea, they don't just go to planning and start it off. They'll have a meeting with planning, and they'll ask Paul, Trudy, and myself to come in the meeting. They'll tell us their ideas. Mr. Shepherd, if he's a realtor, he'll be at the meeting as a realtor and a state rep, or you'll have, if needed, the engineer. They just talk about their plans. That doesn't mean it's a backdoor deal. That happens with almost all. We have meetings on a regular basis of people that have business ideas. They want to know if it fits in the community, if it fits the master plan, okay? But nothing tonight has been done backdoor. You heard Ms. Tinneberry. I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out, for the public.
Well, my
guess I'm
personal
confused.
opinion, it's my personal belief, and I know some of my neighbors who chose not to come because they believe that it was fruitless to come to these meetings based on the prior meetings. These things have all been decided. These public comments are just a dog and pony show. You're not taking these public comments seriously. The meeting where Mr. Bates wanted a liquor license, not a second, but third liquor license. This board clearly was trying to find ways to give the license to that applicant in favor of the other applicant. I watched that particular meeting on video 5, 6, 7 times. And I was just
But who
stunned.
got it?
I'm sorry?
Who got it? Not John Bates.
Yeah, he backed out eventually.
No, because
He
he wasn't
withdrew
going
his
to get it.
application.
He wasn't going to get it, though, because he couldn't by our ordinance. We're open. I mean, I'm just saying that, I don't know how else to say it.
We will end this evening with us differing in opinion.
And you have to remember, we represent 32,000 people. You
That's
filled
what
the
I don't
room up.
believe.
You filled the room up with 50, 60, 75 people. That doesn't represent the 32,000 people that we represent. We have to do what's best for everybody. The roundabout's a contentious issue. It's going to be contentious. But we have to look at the whole community, not just the people that live off Smith Road that say, I don't want it. We have to
Okay.
look at what's best.
Excuse
What about
me,
variance?
Excuse me, we're under public comment.
What about the
Let me
variance? What about the Secor Road variance?
Well, hold on. She's right. We can talk afterwards. But
Okay,
it-
let me just say, address that Secor Road variance. We were told that only those of us who live within, I believe it's 300 feet of the property, were notified. Okay, so in a case like that, you're representing 32,000 people, but you're representing also the people who are directly affected by the variance. Otherwise, you'd be notifying 32,000 people, not just people within 300 feet, right?
Right.
You're right.
But even though you had a clear majority of the people who were notified.
Would you as a taxpayer want me to send 32,000 letters out?
No, that's not my
Every
point.
issue?
My point is that on that particular variance, you had a majority of the people and those who were slightly outside that 300 feet attend the meeting and express their opposition.
Where are they at tonight?
Many of them said they won't come because
We have to move on.
right,
Sir, listen.
because
have
it
to
fell
move
on deaf ears.
Okay, but we have to move on, though. Any more comments from the public? You can't have another comment. Nope. We're got to move on. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Comments from board members? Ms. Tinneberry?
Thank you. There's a lot of confusion in several of the things that came up tonight with regard to road funding and why subdivisions have to pay for their own roads. There is no funding for subdivision roads. The state takes the position that subdivisions, a developer develops, puts in the roads, then no one owns the roads. The state or the township or the county gets absolutely no money for subdivision roads. So I don't know where that money's gonna come from other than the homeowners that live in those subdivisions. They use the road predominantly. They're certainly, they can be used by the public, but they're certainly not thought of as public roads such as primary roads, which is where the road commission gets their money. I am thanking Representative Shepherd for looking into Act 51. It's many, many years old. It needs to be redone. It needs to be brought into the 21st century. And therein lies our biggest problem. There is no money for subdivision roads. The township gets no funding at all for roads. We have to work with the road commission. And it goes through MDOT, and MDOT's supposed to distribute the money based on miles of road and population. But there again, there's politics and all of that as well. So I don't disagree with the gentleman that politics goes on all the time, whether it's locally, in the state, in the federal level. But that's the system that we live in. The misunderstanding by the public isn't that you could fill this room with 500 people and then the board is supposed to vote according to that. There's a thing called property rights. If someone doesn't want a property developed, they need to purchase that property, then it belongs to them, and then they have property rights over that. You cannot, and this board and the planning commission cannot dictate beyond our ordinances, our site plan review process, our subdivision control act, all the laws and ordinances that are in place right now. We cannot decide based on popular opinion if it goes against our ordinance. These people, whether it's Mr. Bates or Mr. Smith or Mr. Jones or you, these people own the property, and we can't decide against our ordinances if they're meeting those ordinances. I mean, we'd end up in court all the time, just like the previous boards did over on, we'll call it the Walmart property, which now is filled with high-rises. You know, it's just, it's a misunderstanding by the public that we either have to follow the will of the people, and certainly we're here to represent the people, so we have to take that into consideration. But there's far more things we have to take into consideration so we don't get into lawsuits that will cost the whole general public lots of money, and which has happened in the past. Additionally, it was mentioned that more homes in there would bring more tax dollars. There again, there's a misunderstanding. Commercial business pays at a higher rate. They have to pay the 6 mills that you and I as homesteads don't pay. They have to. We also get the advantage of people now. People go to Toledo to spend their money, their tax dollars. Toledo gets the benefit of that. Ohio gets the benefit of that. We don't get any benefit of that, but we're bringing people from Ohio into Michigan to spend some of their money here for our taxes. So there's advantages to economic growth. I have far more notes than that. It's just, there was just so much confusion. I do also want to say that I echo Logan Tisdale's comments. We would not allow employees of this township to come to work and sit and watch soap operas all day and not do the work they're required to do. Why do we allow contracted people to get the things or not do the things that they're supposed to do? The statistics don't lie. They come right from the Sheriff's Department. I think that there's something needs to be done with regard to why it's being done, I don't know, but with regard to all of this seemingly mismanagement of sheriff's deputies in Bedford Township. And one last thing, the comment was made that employees in the treasurer's department belong to the treasurer, and employees in the clerk's department belong to the clerk. That's true with regard to scheduling, but it's not true with regard to who is in charge of all employees except the elected officials and their deputies. It's this board. This board is responsible and answerable to by all employees except the elected officials and their deputies. So I don't know what impression has been given to the public, but the control or the buck stops here, not with each elected official. That's it.
Can you expand, what do you expect this board to do? Okay, when you're dealing with a
About the
sheriff
employees or
that
what?
says, you contract with me, this is how I run my department, period.
Yeah.
No gray area.
Well, what I expect is to find out why these people are spending so much time in Bedford Township with no
Okay.
activity.
But you have a sheriff that says, they're my officers. You want to contract with me, this is what you get. You don't tell me how to run my sheriff's department.
Oh, I tell you.
So when it's saying either we contract with them or we don't, because if we contract with them, they're going to run the sheriff's department how they're running it.
No, I think that we should have something to say about the contract. Now is not the time. I will come and meet with you because I also don't want to hear any more about citizens being abused. I don't want to
Well,
hear
it's only
it as a
from one
trustee.
citizen.
As a trustee, I do not want to hear that again at a board meeting.
How many citizens have you heard that from?
It doesn't matter.
Well, one.
I don't think
One.
any should be abused.
None of them are being abused. That's her opinion, and I pray for her daily. Mr. Clemens?
Wow. I was going to wish everybody a Happy New Year. Somehow that seems a little bit inappropriate given the conversation. I do want to circle back to something that Nancy said earlier in the meeting and echo it, and I know it's redundant, but I do appreciate the way the fire department is handling these inspections. I realize that there are people who don't appreciate it, and I understand that viewpoint, and sir, I specifically appreciate the way you handled yourself at the podium. It's very easy to deal with people and to understand when they're coming from, and we can have those kind of logical exchanges, and so I very much appreciate that. But I also appreciate the fact that the fire department is doing what this board has told you to do. So now it falls on this board to figure out where we go from there. But from a consistency standpoint, I think the residents have an expectation, and I think you guys are meeting that expectation. So on that front, I thank you for that. On a personal note, tomorrow is National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Logan, you're here tonight, so I would say thank you personally for all your time that you worked on the road. It is a tough job, and it's a job where everybody Monday morning quarterbacks virtually everything you do. But I appreciate those that protect us in this community. I appreciate the state police. I still have a number of personal friends who worked in the agencies that I was employed. And I don't want to let that day pass without at least acknowledging what they're doing. The last thing is, and we're beating the rezoning drum to death, but I appreciate the comments that have been said tonight, but I think this is a classic example of everybody wants us to have more prisons, but nobody wants a prison by their house. Everybody loves to have an airport convenient so they can run and be there real quick and take off on whatever business matter they have, but nobody wants the runway to fly over their home. And so there are times where if it doesn't affect you directly, it doesn't sting quite as badly, and when it affects you directly, it hurts, and it hurts for real. And one of the tough things we have to do is to parse through those decisions and make the best ones we can. We don't have a mirror ball. We can't guarantee the outcomes. But I can tell you that in my experience, having been on this board for 2 years, not having been affiliated with any group or good old boy system in this community, I've not had the experience that I keep hearing get described. And I can tell you that I spend hours reviewing these decisions on the phone calls with planning, with building. And so I just hope people realize that even when things don't go the way that we might individually want them to go, there are times I vote and I lose. I'm on the wrong end of the vote. I can only do what I think is in the best interest for the taxpayers. And hopefully that in the long run, those decisions will materialize and we'll see a better Bedford come out of the decisions we make today. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Excuse me, I wanted to hear your federal connection. Are you one of Trump's something or other?
I don't respond to questions from the podium during our meeting, but thank you. I'll be
Wait
more than
for
happy
me.
to talk with Tim after the meeting. For you,
Mr.
Nancy,
Montry?
I've never been employed by the federal government.
Mr. Montry?
I would just say, I oppose forcing anyone to give a key to their building to the government. And that's with full respect to the fire department, who I believe, like, I think as TC said, is 100% doing their job. I think it's that, I'm gonna look into figuring out how we can opt out somehow, being able to offer an option, that it's an optional, nice, very nice thing, an option for a business owner, but, like, I wouldn't ever ask anybody to give a key to their building to the government. That's all I got.
Mr. Francis?
Requiring that is kind of like laws that say you have to wear a seatbelt. I mean, it's your life. If you're bounced out of the car because you didn't wear a seatbelt, so be it. But sometimes people have to be forced to do things that are best for themselves. And I've been in that position on several items. Tonight was an interesting meeting. A lot of allegations were made. I resent the one that was talking about some backroom deals or whatever. That smacks of the old, well, what most people think of politicians. I'm not a politician. You can tell by the way I talk and what I say. But this board doesn't operate that way. As a board, we have never operated that way that I'm aware of. I've been on the board, this is my 14th year. We've never operated that way. Now, individuals might talk to people, but they don't represent the township. If, people call us up and, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? We were elected to answer some of those questions. We can't just stonewall and say, sorry, I can't talk to you because it's privileged interest. I don't know. Where does that come from? I don't understand the comment that there's backroom deals. I'm probably not saying exactly the way it was put. But I personally resent that because I don't think this board has ever done that. Have boards made mistakes? Sure. They all will make mistakes because they're all comprised of human beings and we all make mistakes. The issue is, do you correct them when you find out you made a mistake? That's where the issue really comes to play in my view, because we're human, we're going to make mistakes. I hope that we can keep the dialogue with the citizens and the board still going. I like the idea of having those pre-meetings that you had set up earlier. We haven't had a lot of those lately, but maybe we should do that. From the people that attended the meeting tonight, there obviously is a lack of trust between them and the board members. We need to heal that. We represent them. We don't dictate to them. I better get off my soapbox. Thanks.
Ms. Schertzberger?
Just want to answer a couple questions first. Beautification budget, I believe, is $10,000. Does anyone remember? I think it's 10,000. It's been the same amount over the years. I'm not sure where the comment it was taken away. We didn't take their budget away. It's still there, so when we get the committee back, they'll have their same budget.
Well, just for the record, there's still 3 people on it.
Yes, there are. There are 3. It's not enough for a quorum, but there are still 3 on the committee. So when we get more names, and, they still do have a budget. A recall, there's a lot of information. It's not something I can just answer. You need a petition, it's a percentage, and it would be based on this last November election. Then there's verbiage you have to write, which has to be approved by the county. There's multiple steps to it. It's not an easy process. Again, I want to echo the back door. I'm not sure where that came from. And as far as the liquor, I was offended because that liquor license, I'm probably the only one who sat here and went, no. Our ordinance says this, this, and this. So I did not vote yes. I was trying to point the ordinance out to other members, saying that this other person was more qualified and fell under our ordinance. And you can go back and watch the tape, and you'll see that. Want to remind the residents that Monday, January 21st, the township will be closed to observe Martin Luther King Day. Christmas trees can still be dropped off at Carr Park through this Saturday, January 12th. Everyone should have received the township newsletter. It was in the Bedford Press that was, I don't remember when it was. The 17th? 18th. Oh, the 18th? Okay, the 18th it came out. Our maintenance building, the insurance claim is finally settled, so the building will start getting repairs from the contractor that we approved. We should be getting the check any day to start that. And then last, I just want to wish my father a happy 90th birthday to Ken Miller. Happy birthday, Dad. That's all.
Doug, I just want to thank you for all your hard work that you're doing in the fire department and just, you know, bringing stuff out in the open, from burning permits to, you know, you're doing a good job, and I appreciate it. I have a lot I could talk about tonight. Tonight's one of those meetings to where, you know, it's not the best, but I will talk about some of the allegations that were made. I don't think there's anybody on this board that wants a citizen walking through the doors that say employees only. Mine's the only one, I believe, that doesn't say that, to where residents are welcome to just walk in. Okay? I have seen multiple times the individual that came up walk through the doors, and I've gone over there after she's left, and they don't like it. Okay? But a lot of people don't want to deal with what I deal with, so somebody's got to stand up. And I guess that's me, okay? Because there's personal files over there. There's people doing business of some of these doors that she just walks in that have a lot of personal information. And it says employees only for a reason. And if I've got to be the one to tell her that, I guess I got to be the one to tell her that. Now, does that make me a bully, Mrs. Tinneberry? You decide. But one person saying that I'm bullying, I guess, you know, take it for what it's worth. I did a ride-along with Mr. Montree about 2 weeks ago with the assessing department just to do it. I mean, I work with him on a daily basis, but I thought it'd be good just to do it. We're going to be bringing to the meeting, probably the next meeting, for a vote to decide whether or not we want to bring Teresa full-time and bring Pete to part-time. They're both temporary employees right now. I highly recommend, if you don't have time for the ride-along, I highly recommend you go into the office and schedule a couple hours just so they can show you everything they do. A lot has changed over in 15 years, 20 years. A lot has changed over there. But I highly recommend that if you haven't done it, give them the time. They've put a lot of hard work and effort over the last 4 months to get this board to see what they've tried. And I think that's the least we owe them, is that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the sidewalk from the school to the library. I'm still working on getting some people to submit some bids for digging out the portion of it. It doesn't look like it's going to get done this year. Probably best bet is to hold off till spring and start the project fresh, but getting a lot of things lined up there. I think it'll be really good to have them to have a safe walking path from the school to the library, so I look forward to that. I attended the Monroe County address at the chamber today, the county address, and there's a lot of good things going. A lot of good people serve this county. Excited about the future with, you know, it was a great deal. I want to talk a little bit about the Bedford Business Summit. This is something that I've talked about since day one of coming here, is partnerships. Partnerships with the schools, partnerships with businesses, the BBA, and this is what this is right here, the Bedford Business Summit. We have a packed house. We can't take any more people in for it, and but these are things that we're going to continue to do, and I look forward to it, and I want to thank everybody involved with it. I know the Lewis Avenue Committee helped spearhead a lot of this. And I want to thank them. I thank the BBA, and I thank Al. They've put a lot of hard work into it as well. And I could echo, you know, everything that's been said tonight. You know, Mr. Tisdale, he comes here every meeting and says pretty much the same thing, but this board went through a study, and we looked at it, and they come here, the sheriff comes here and says they do community policing. Their goal isn't to do tickets. They told us that. So either we keep the police department and they do what they're doing, or we don't. And this board decided to keep them and continue on with what we're doing for many different reasons. So at this point, you know, I mean, Mr. Tisdale can keep coming to the mic and keep telling us that we're not paying attention, we're not doing our job, but they're doing what they're telling us. They told us, this is what we're doing, community policing. We're gonna be in the neighborhoods, we're gonna be, you know, I mean, that's what they're doing. So if we expect them to have 75 tickets, or even 10 tickets, they're not gonna have it. I mean, that's not what they're out doing. So I really don't know how to answer that question at this point. Other than that, there's a lot of positive things going on. We're going to continue all the things that we've started over the last couple of years, and I look forward to working with everybody on this board. We have a great group of people up here, in my opinion, that truly care about this township, and I think we're truly blessed. So other than that, we stand adjourned.